Before we really get far into Swift, I think there's something that's worth mentioning. Apple's taking a little bit of a different approach regarding several things, but one of them is something that a lot of us know exists, but we don't really regularly use, and that is constants. A constant is, of course, a number that doesn't change. And of course, we also have variables, which is something that does change. Now, in a lot of languages, most languages have constants, pretty much all of them. But despite that, we pretty much just use variables anyways. We just decide not to change them with any of the code. And that's fine. I mean, it's worked for us. But Apple took a little bit of a different approach with it. In fact, it's also sort of interesting too. JavaScript, which we just recently worked with before looking at Swift, it has constants now, but this is like 20 years after it was written. Until, like, I don't know, just a few years ago, it didn't have constants. It might have had it for one or two browsers here or there, but it wasn't widespread. It wasn't supported by all the browsers. It was still being implemented, which is fairly interesting. So, if you look at a lot of JavaScript code, you're not going to see any constants. However, if you look at a lot of Swift code, you will see constants because Apple is not only acknowledging constants, but they are encouraging it. Just to kind of demonstrate, let's go ahead and do a var, and we're going to call it it's a number. It's going to be a number, it's going to be an integer, and we'll go ahead and make it 23. Now notice there's no semicolons. I'm not using semicolons. For a constant, we're going to do let is a number 2, I guess, equals, let's stick with 23, I suppose. If we want to change it's a number, we could, add to it. And we can see some addition over here. Now the issue is this only changed this part. This actually didn't change the number, because to change the number, we would need to do either it's a number equals it's a number. Oh, my mistake, sorry. Which then makes it actually become 28. Granted, you can't tell the difference right now, but if I do this, and I instead delete that, you can see the difference, right? So, yeah. Now what you can also do is, instead of typing the whole thing out twice, you can just do plus equals, and that's going to add to it and make it equal the new sum. So, however, if we do it's a number 2, plus 5 is fine because we aren't actually changing it's a number. But if we do equals, it gives us a warning error. It's a not so happy. And if we do it's a number 2 again, well, actually, it's not even going to tell us. It is not happy with me. So, we need to get rid of that. And now you can see, yeah, it's still 23. It's constant. It doesn't change. It's constant. Now, something else to note real fast. Being that we were just looking at JavaScript, you might be used to semicolons. That's okay. If you put semicolons after here, Swift is okay with that. There are some things that Swift is very strict about, and there are some things that it's not. So if you want semicolons, you're good. This white space, some white space matters, some doesn't. See, it's alright. Now what you should do versus what you do actually do, there are some things like it's preferred not to have them, but it's okay with them. It's obviously not exploding or getting angry like it did a moment ago. Now one thing that it is strict about, you can't just make a variable like that. That doesn't work. You need to actually use the var in there. Var is a number 3. Not only that, but you actually can't not define it either. You have to give it some sort of definition. So we could do that by giving it an equals and something like that, because it can figure out that that's an integer. Or if I want to put a decimal point in there, then it's going to know it's a float. So not a big deal. Now, if you need to create the variable early, or you want to create the variable early because you want to keep your variables together, but you don't have a value for it yet, you can just tell it that it's, whoa, relax, that it's an integer. Sorry. There, now it's happy. That it's an integer, or a string, or a constant, or whatever. So that's fine. And part of that is also, just being a little bit more clear. If you're reading a program, if you're working on a program with someone else, and you see just this huge list of variables and there's no values and there's no types, and you're then having to try to search through their program later on to find out what type it is or what it is, that can be confusing, that's not clear, that can cause mistakes. If you're creating the variable, you need to define it somehow, if not with an actual value, then at least with a type to help whoever is reading the code actually understand it.